Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge just got even better. When it comes to the history of the beat-em-up genre, the arcade Turtles beat-em-ups of the late 80s and early 90s marked the pinnacle of the franchise's legacy in gaming. However, in recent years, all that would finally change with the release of the equally brilliant Shredder's Revenge. Instantly picking up legions of fans, this is a brawler that has it all, and exists as one of those rare examples in gaming where a long-awaited title truly does live up to the hype. Coming out a few years ago now, this was a classic on arrival, but what is even cooler is that they are constantly adding new content and making this game better all the time, including launching a whole wave of DLC last year and another brand new wave as of September's PlayStation State of Play event. So with that said, join me today as we not only examine all the new features this game has to offer, but also revisit the amazing creation of this title, its history, and what made it so good in the first place. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. This is why Shredder's Revenge is now even better. Yeah. Shredder's Revenge, a beat-em-up for the ages, and one of my personal favourites of the modern era. Not only is this game amazing, but I can get you it for dirt cheap. Use my link via the pinned comment to get 46% off the game, or if you want to procure other brawlers of the beat-em-up renaissance period, I can get you 55% off of Double Dragon Gaiden, 60% off of Streets of Rage 4, and up to 78% off of the River City Girls games. Wow! You can get huge deals on thousands of modern, retro, AAA and indie titles by using my links, so hope you find something for yourself, and happy shopping. We really live in a golden era of beat-em-ups right now, but a few years ago, sadly, this wasn't always the case. So to further illustrate Shredder's Revenge's greatness, let me first take you back to a different time. 2012, the year of the London Olympics, the Arab Spring, and a terrible movie about the end of the world. The period is well known for many things, but one of them certainly isn't beat-em-ups. In fact, game journalist of IGN, Mitch Dyer, would do an epic job of showing to us just how much the mainstream gaming media at the time seemed to loathe the genre. Not only burying Double Dragon Neon in his review of the game that year, but in the process burying the entire genre as a whole. In his scathing piece he would write, "Let's address a sad truth nobody wants to hear. The brawler genre is not very good anymore. The beat-em-up was built on the back of arcade game design. Difficulty didn't come by design, but by consequence of clunky mechanics meant to scam kids out of more quarters." Regarding the genre, he would add, "It is afraid to let go of the 80s altar it worships at, even if it means cramming a crummy, archaic experience down players' throats." Mitch Dyer, along with many other gaming journalists, had written off an entire genre as old, dated garbage that would never make a comeback. But fast forward a decade later, and it becomes clear that this ignorant write-up could not have been more wrong. While Mitch would move on to writing plots for dubious Star Wars games on behalf of EA, the beat-em-up genre would go from strength to strength, delivering to us classic after classic, with Streets of Rage 4 sitting atop the mountain as arguably the best of the whole bunch. This is of course debatably until we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, a game that has proved once and for all that beat-em-ups are popular and mainstream again. What is interesting though about this Turtles game is that it has clearly been inspired by the Turtles arcade classics. But at the same time, the game's heritage is just as much rooted in the 21st century as it is linked to the arcade hits. And it also goes a hell of a long way in explaining this game's high pedigree. To grasp this further, all we need to do is look at the development studio behind the title, known as Tribute Games, who are based out in Montreal, Canada. Back in 2007, key staff members from Tribute Games worked at Ubisoft Montreal, with them developing a criminally underrated Turtles beat-em-up for Nintendo's Game Boy Advance hardware. This hidden gem was by far the greatest Ninja Turtles video game since the franchise's arcade days, delivering a fun and addictive brawler in an era in which the genre was practically dead. Most who have played this game though, including myself, describe a high caliber experience that certainly deserves some extra attention. However,
this would not be the only brawler from Ubisoft Montreal, as fast forward another 3 years, we would get the surprisingly brilliant Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. This shockingly good video game, based on the now cult favourite movie of the same name, was a brilliantly fun effort, offering up the best beat 'em up that the world had seen in many years. Not bad at all for a digital only game made for Xbox Live and the PlayStation Network. But it tells you all you need to know about the level of respect that the genre was getting at the time. Even the very best games were receiving little in the way of a marketing push or fanfare. Since it was a digital only game, fast forward to December the 30th 2014, the game would be delisted from digital stores. But fortunately, this would not be the last we would see of this one. Fans would beg for years to see this video game brought back, which is exactly what would happen 7 years later in 2021, 11 years after the game's initial release. Not only was the game made readily available across all modern digital storefronts, but even physical versions of the game were manufactured this time around. With games like this, Streets of Rage 4, River City Girls and Fighting Rage being on the market simultaneously, it was clear the beat-em-up renaissance period was here. And with games like Final Vendetta and River City Girls 2 on the horizon, it has looked like things would only get better. Speaking of this new golden age for the arcade-style brawler, publishers of Streets of Rage 4, Dotemu, would shock the world once more, when on March 10th, 2021, they would drop a trailer for another beat-em-up that had previously only seemed like the stuff of dreams. The magical trailer would blare out a remixed version of the classic Ninja Turtles theme tune, laid over the top of some awesome animated visuals reminiscent of the 80s American cartoon favourite. The best though was yet to come, as gameplay was quickly revealed of an all-new beat-em-up based on the arcade originals. This video would display that the game would be able to be played with at least 4-player cooperative play, and the title, full of beautiful sprite work, was being developed by none other than Tribute Games, the Montreal development studio where key staff members work, who not only brought to us Scott Pilgrim, but of course the previous decent Turtles brawler. The combination of these guys working with Dotemu, the Streets of Rage 4 publishers, made me feel like we were in very safe hands indeed. But of course, the game now had a hell of a lot of hype to live up to. As great as this game looked from the trailers, everyone was more than aware that delivering a game of the same calibre as Turtles Arcade and Turtles in Time would be a tall order indeed, but staff at Tribute Games would toil away to try and make this dream a reality. Development would progress and Dotemu would reveal more and more about the game on their YouTube channel page. But some of the coolest info on the game would begin to be published on April 13th, 2022, with the publisher releasing videos documenting the development process. Jean-Francois Major, the technical director of Tribute Games, would sit down for a coffee with Dotemu executive producer Cyrille Imbert, where they would discuss the project's inception. Major notes that he grew up with the franchise and dressed up as Donatello for Halloween as a child, with the Turtles forever being present in his life since. Imbert states that after finding success working on Streets of Rage 4, his company were keen to publish another huge beat-em-up and would open discussions with Nickelodeon about the possibility of making a new Turtles game. It would be here that Imbert and company would learn that another company had pitched to them the same idea, which was of course Tribute Games, resulting in the two companies deciding that this was the perfect opportunity to team up and clean shell. They also raise that with the boom in popularity of retro gaming and nostalgia in general, that the bringing back of the 1987 Turtles seemed like a lucrative move that would make sense. The fully animated trailer, with the theme from the original show featuring gameplay full of stunning pixel art, was exactly what gamers and long-time Turtles fans were hungry for. In a further upload to the Dotemu channel, we also got to learn more about the games from Frederick Gemus, Shredder's Revenge's designer, who brings up that he used to harass his parents to allow him to play the Turtles at the arcades. The game's director, Jonathan Levine, who also worked on the 2007 GBA game, brings up the core fun factors with the new game will be the tone, the upbeatness and all of the crazy characters of the series. That, when paired with the game's multiplayer aspect, will deliver a pick up and play experience that is perfect to enjoy with friends and family. He also mentions that he went back and played all of the old games at the start of the production, noting that with the classic arcade games that the pacing is so fast they play almost like shoot 'em ups, with enemies entering the screen in patterns, with players having to get into a rhythm to beat the stages. It was key to include this sort of pacing if they wanted a game that felt like the best Turtles of yesteryear. Stages would be designed like episodes, with the DNA of the game being reminiscent of the classic 80s cartoon. Jameis would also add that a story mode and arcade mode would both be included so that old school gamers could play the game like those from the old days, or players could opt for a more casual experience, with stages over a world map featuring challenges and more. How super easy the game was to jump in and out of was an essential ingredient that the developers wanted in Shredder's Revenge. They would also bring up how exciting it was to be introducing April and Master Splinter to the game, to not only bring in playable characters who were different from the Turtles, but also because the characters have been hanging out with the heroic foursome for so long. In terms of the rest of the game's cast, Jameis mentions that he wanted the game to include as large a scope of different characters together as possible, drawing comparisons with a 90s kid playing with all of their Turtles action figures simultaneously. Also mentioning that the game would be littered with cameos and Easter eggs that old school fans would appreciate. Jameis would describe what they worked on as the ultimate arcade beat 'em up game. Its gameplay is fast and all about ploughing through hordes of foot soldiers, focusing more on crowd control and getting rid of enemies quickly rather than focusing on technical one-on-one combat like the wonderful Streets of Rage 4. Adam Marin, the game's art director, adds that from the beginning the art team's goal was simple but lofty. We wanted to give Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fans a chance to relive the series' classic 80s beat 'em up action, with a greater than ever sense of personality felt in each individual asset. To get there, they drew on decades of classic continuity, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics, films and cartoons. Justin Sear, the animation supervisor for the game, adds that since the 1987 incarnation of the show is so distinct, it has involved him going back a lot over the old shows and the old games. There's been a lot of research involved looking at what makes each character distinct and coming up with animations that reflected that. Running cycles, for example, were different to match each character, reflecting their unique quirks. Yannick Belziz, the game's scriptwriter, mentions that he went back and watched old episodes for the project too, for character-specific and environment-specific info. The game's composer, T. Lopez, brings up that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the first Saturday morning cartoon that he can remember watching, and never imagined making music for such a game. He would create music for the game inspired by music from the classic show, such as the track reminiscent of Channel 6's theme, for example, that would help throw the player into that environment on the game's opening stage. When composing the game's tracks, Lopez states that with a game like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, he felt it needed kick-ass beats for the action factor, but also for old instruments that were used back in the day that people will recognise from those times. Lopez was so thorough in his approach that he would obtain sounds from the same sources as the composers from years ago, researching old video games, movies, for TV series, all absorbing information from a variety of sources. He describes that transcribing the Turtles into music had a lot to do with the music's attitude, reflecting what was going on screen, often creating tracks that old school fans were going to identify with. So, after a 2-year development cycle and a lot of love, respect and hard work being pumped into the game by a passionate and driven team, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge is at last finally here. In Dotamu's own words, the company describes this gem as being a video game that features modernised gameplay rooted in timeless classic brawling mechanics. They pitch Turtles as a video game whereby players must bash their way through gorgeous pixel art environments and slay tons of hellacious enemies while using their favourite Ninja Turtle. Each character has their own skills and moves, making a run with each unique. Players can pick a fighter, use radical combos to defeat their opponents, and experience intense combat loaded with breathtaking action and outrageous ninja abilities. You can grab your best friend and play with multiple simultaneously. Powering the game on for the first time, gamers will be dazzled by the startup animation first seen in the game's trailer, featuring the original Turtles theme, which is enough to get any player's blood flowing. Now, we mentioned earlier that the game contains both an arcade and story mode, with there being cutscenes present that help push the game's narrative along. As for this game's story, it starts out with Bebop and Rocksteady assaulting Channel 6 and stealing super gnarly devices to support Krang and Shredder's latest twisted plan. Throughout this adventure, the Turtles battle across a righteous range of timeless locations from the franchise that help make the experience feel all the more authentic. From Manhattan and Coney Island to city rooftops and dank sewers, there is an assortment of varied themed stages to get through, trouncing foot soldiers, triceratons and rock troops all along the way. Playing through this game myself, one of the main things I took from it is what a huge beat 'em up this is, with the title offering up a massive experience featuring a total of a whopping 16 different stages. In fact, I'm pretty sure that this is the longest arcade style beat 'em up I have ever played through, with this unique brawler offering up an insane amount of variety from its stages to all of the crazy different bosses to take out. This mind-blowing nostalgia fest essentially brings along old school gameplay that has been enhanced through the use of its super fresh mechanics. This is emphasised through the game's brawling mechanics that have plenty in common with the games of old, but brings plenty of new elements to the table too. What I mean by this is that you can perform classic moves such as the jumping diving kick, or perform the iconic manoeuvre of picking up an opponent, then comically hurling them towards your viewing monitor. It is touches like this that help make the game feel in tune with the greatness that came before it. But to be fair, not only do the Turtles have richer general movesets than what came before, with manoeuvres that are unique to each in-game character, but the game also introduces what is essentially a combo meter, with fighters able to build it up by performing combos against opponents. Once this is filled up, the selectable characters can perform huge satisfying attacks that can do a lot of damage to a lot of enemies at once, which I must say is not only a hell of a lot of fun to do, but it also further emphasises how quick gameplay in this one can be. There is a lot of moves to gain experience with, and in story mode you can level up to unlock new super attacks, gain additional life and extend the ninja power bar. Combat wise, this is by far the deepest Turtles brawler yet, and that is without even mentioning the varied double teams that are possible and the ability to give health to a co-op partner. There are many layers to the beat 'em up action in this expertly crafted future classic. It's not just the fighting in this one that is top notch though, but also of course the graphics. Now we have already gone through some of the lengths that the development team went through to make this game the most pleasurable experience possible, and the title's gorgeous pixel renders are yet another reason to love this lunacy. The game's signature locales in this one are brimming with detail, and constant callbacks to the show and video games of yesteryear are present. There is so much I could talk about with regards to this element of the game, however I feel video clips I've used throughout can get away with doing the talking for me. As you can see, the game is stunning and is chock full of carefully drawn characters that ooze personality and charm. With regards to the characters, one of my favourite things about the game is of course the many memorable boss battles, particularly in the later portions of the game where I was forced to think on my feet a little more. Each of these opponents requires a different strategy to defeat, with some of these processes becoming more complex as we progress through the game. The final throws was definitely my favourite portion, with boss battles not only being inventive, but somehow often being nostalgic simultaneously. Take this fight with Chrome Dome for example, where he at points punches you from afar as you fight him from his first person perspective. This boss design is reminiscent of a Shredder battle in the Super Nintendo version of Turtles in Time. I must say the boss fight against the Statue of Tyranny also provides the fun visual and an epic feeling boss encounter, but nothing quite matched up to getting to face off against Super Shredder, an opponent who feels invincible at first until you learn his patterns and strike in his moments of weakness. destroying Kevin Nash's quads to ensure he would not bother me again was a satisfying experience to say the least. There is only one Big Daddy cool around here, and he wears a top hat. Yeah. The story mode provides some nice additional features, such as additional items to find within stages, and even being able to unlock Casey Jones as the secret 7th playable fighter. A fan favourite of a fighter who fans have been desperate to see as a playable in an official classic arcade style Turtles game for as long as the character has existed. Shredder's Revenge also marks the first Turtles game of this kind where you have the option to incredibly play the game with up to 6 people cooperatively, both locally and online. An awesome feature that has made this my all-time favourite 6-player beat-em-up, surpassing the memorable X-Men arcade. The whole video game is laced together with a banging original soundtrack, which as mentioned was composed by T. Lopez, which in my opinion fits the theme and feel of the game perfectly. Like much of the rest of this game, it all sounds quite familiar, yet at the same time sounds so fresh. Since beating story mode, I am highly keen to play this game more so that I can continue to take in the atmosphere and complete more of the challenges. I loved everything about this game, and I feel it built on the likes of Turtles in Time and Turtles Arcade perfectly, presenting a modern experience that still has plenty of callbacks that remind us of a time that makes us all feel warm and fuzzy. But these are just the opinions of one man, me. So rather than just take my word for it, let's hear what the mainstream gaming media had to say. IGN, the company who had a journalist write off beat-em-ups completely 10 years ago, would summarise, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge is exactly what it looks like. A lovingly crafted reimagining of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade beat-em-ups from one of the best beat-em-up developers in the business today. It's the perfect game to have in the library for when a group of friends come over and you want to play something that's simple, fun, and can be comfortably finished in a single sitting. Destructoid would add, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge is a delightful celebration of the heroes in a half shell. More importantly, it's simply a hell of a lot of fun to play. For anyone who ever jumped off of a schoolyard wall, tree branch in hand shouting "Cowabunga," Shredder's Revenge is absolutely worth shelling out for. GameSpot would write the game is a tremendous labour of love that lives up to the legacy of Turtles in Time and the brawlers that came before it. Combat is fast paced and simple yet satisfying, while new features help modernise the action without tampering with its 16-bit essence. Rehashing a classic retro game is always a tough ask, but Shredder's Revenge avoids the obvious pitfalls and successfully brings about the revival of everyone's favourite Mutant Turtles.
The game, with its high quality on release, would receive unanimous praise across the board, but a few years removed from all of this, there are now more reasons to love this epic title than ever. On August 31st, 2023, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge's Dimension Shell Shock DLC would see release, an additional wave of content that made this already excellent game even better. Dimension Shell Shock is an exciting DLC expansion that builds on the foundation of Shredder's Revenge by introducing a range of new features and content. In doing so, it enriches the experience with fresh characters, a novel survival mode, and various customization options, making it an attractive addition for fans of the series. One of the most notable features of Dimension Shell Shock DLC was the introduction of 2 new playable characters. These include Usagi Yojimbo, the iconic samurai rabbit from the Usagi Yojimbo comics, who makes his debut bringing his distinct sword fighting skills and martial prowess to the game. His combat style is both fluid and powerful, making him a unique addition to the roster. Then we have Karai, a character deeply rooted in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lore, with ties to the Foot Clan. Known for her agility and electrifying attacks, she adds a dynamic new fighting style to the lineup. These characters expand the game's already rich combat diversity, providing even more exciting options to us players, and plenty of fresh techniques and combos to master. Building on this, as mentioned, the DLC's survival mode offers a twist on the traditional beat-em-up formula. In this mode, players can travel across various dimensions, each with their own distinct enemies, challenges, and visual themes. As players progress, they collect crystals that enable them to shift between these dimensions, keeping the gameplay engaging and unpredictable. This dimension hopping mechanic introduces a sense of variety. As players survive increasingly difficult waves of enemies, they can unlock permanent upgrades, power-ups, new moves, and different colour schemes for characters, creating a satisfying sense of progression that keeps the mode compelling and rewarding. What's more is that in addition to the new gameplay modes, the DLC features new music and visuals that enhance the overall experience. The fresh tracks maintain the retro aesthetic that Shredder's Revenge is known for, while introducing energetic and thematic music that complements the dimension hopping adventures. This variety in visuals helps to keep the game feeling fresh, even for players who have spent countless hours with the base game, or perhaps years at this point. Thankfully, the DLC maintains the game's strong multiplayer experience, ensuring that all new content can be enjoyed with friends both locally and online. This feature is particularly important as it allows players to tackle the challenges of survival mode together, making the dimension hopping experience more engaging and more cooperative. While this stood out as a significant expansion, at the September 2024 PlayStation State of Play event, even more DLC was announced for the game, making Shredder's Revenge even richer. As outlined by the PlayStation blog, the Radical Reptiles DLC introduces 2 new characters, Mona Lisa and Mondo Gecko. Mona Lisa, a once human scientist turned mutant salamander, brings her cheery attitude to battle against the Foot Clan, and Mondo Gecko, the coolest cement surfing mutant, joins forces in this action-packed DLC. They outline that Mona boasts a unique fling slam, super flying kick, and multiple projectile attacks with special braking animations, making her a beginner-friendly ranged character. Her science background is expressed through her chemistry equipment, and fun details like her 90s toy blowfish mace are included to delight fans. They add that Mona Lisa's design process was more relaxed and natural compared to Mondo, thanks to her naturally flowing shapes and graceful movements. Her design emphasises her playful yet fierce combat style. Mona's projectile-based attacks offer a fresh gameplay experience, making her stand out in melee situations, especially in multiplayer sessions. As for Mondo Gecko, they note that he is known for his laid-back attitude and legendary skateboarding tricks. Mondo's design and development was a challenge for the devs at Tribute. Integrating his skateboard into various animations, including attacks and being hit, posed significant technical challenges. Mondo's aerial acrobatics and bounce attacks make him a dynamic and highly effective fighter. His super attacks are spectacular, with the ground version featuring pyrotechnic effects and breakdancing moves, while the air version delivers a powerful single hit with fire thrusters. Inspiration for Mondo's design came from 80s and 90s skateboarding tricks, creating a visually and mechanically engaging character. The developers ensured his animations and moveset addressed players' feedback on air control, making him a fun and satisfying addition to the roster. On top of yet another 2 characters to players, a free update to the game adds a new remix of the original soundtrack, broadening the appeal of this already legendary beat-em-up even further. Through the love and attention to detail that continues to be put in when crafting this game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge remains beloved by fans for its nostalgic yet fresh take on the classic beat-em-up genre, capturing the essence of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade roots. It offers vibrant pixel art, smooth animations, and a dynamic soundtrack that perfectly encapsulate the spirit of the original 1980s cartoon. It balances retro-inspired gameplay with modern mechanics perfectly, making it accessible to both long-time fans and newcomers, all while paying homage to the beloved franchise's history with its multiple DLC updates, with this one just keeping on getting better and better. Anyway, don't forget I can get you a huge discount on this game, along with up to 90% off on thousands of others too, simply by using my affiliate link. I hope you treat yourself to some lovely games today, and I'll see you all again soon. Cheerio.